All right. Welcome to the 300 Raw Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan. Today, we're diving into the profound concept where your attention goes, your energy flows. This idea is rooted in the fascinating principles of quantum mechanics and the two-slit experiment, emphasizing how our focus and attentions interact with the universe, creating our own holographic structures. Let's embark on this journey of understanding how we can shape our reality through focused attention and intention. First, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the guest. We had Francisco on last episode during the channeling of Ra, where we actually got to first meet him. But I knew with as much as we had going on in the episode, we wouldn't have quite the time to get to know Francisco a little bit better. So I wanted to save some space here in the beginning of this episode. And Francisco, can you kind of maybe go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? And when I mean that too, I want to get into a better understanding of I don't necessarily want to know your job or, you know what I mean? Like when people usually are kind of I really want to know where you're at, man, with your spiritual sense and, in that context. So where you're from a little bit maybe and a better understanding of who you really, really are.
Yes, well, my name is Francisco and I live in El Salvador. I'm 30 years old, and well, my spiritual journey, I have always had this attraction or connection to the unknown. I have always felt like a call to getting to know more about space and the paranormal stuff and everything that we cannot actually see, because um, I know that there's so much around us that we can't perceive, but it's there. So I'm always interested in getting to know more about what I can perceive with, for example, my own energy. And well, I was born in a Catholic family and always had these beliefs, but I have been like a black sheep in my family. So I have always had some different beliefs from my family, and now that I have been growing up, I have got my own perception of life and my own what resonates with me. So I've been building my own beliefs, and uh, something that I like to do is to respect the people's beliefs, but also that they respect me back. So it's like a healthy boundary that you have to put with people. But uh, in these past few years, I have been connecting more with other people that actually have my same beliefs or similar. And it was in 2020 when all this the my real awakening started, because I don't know, I think something like some energy activated many people all around the world in that year, because I've heard other people uh, mention that they also started questioning more around that year and getting to know more about the spiritual journey. And uh, at first, my whole life, I've always admired uh, gifted people, and I thought that I was not able to do what they did. But in these past few years, I've learned that I can also be like them. I have my own gifts and talents, and at the end, it's always like learning more about yourself and learning to listen to your inner voice and guidance, and to learn that you are as capable as any other person, and that we all have like different times for everything, different lessons and a different journey. So it's about not expecting to be like anyone else, because everyone is like a unique being in this planet. So it's exciting to getting to know more about the real you.
I really, really like how you preface that at the end, getting to know the real you. So, just kind of thinking a little bit about what you said there. Was there anything in 2020 that like significantly happened right away, or did you just overall start expanding this, like, you know, understanding that maybe the world wasn't quite what we thought it was? And was that 2020 time like when you really kind of broke away from the Catholic stuff that you talked about earlier, or was that earlier in life? And then, you know, because I do like talking about that because I myself feel that it's the same for me. I was raised in a certain environment, but I always kind of question the why, like why do we do this? Like it didn't just quite sit right with me. So I always had those questions, but yeah, I would say as I got older, especially in recent years, I started to understand a much broader perspective of religion and all religions and all civilizations and more of an omnipresence about it, which, for me actually probably started happening around 2019, 2020, around the same time frame. So, was there anything, I guess, in context that year specifically, or is it just more a generalization that you progressed that year a lot uh, in that sense?
I think it was, well, many things that got connected, because one, the isolation maybe helped everyone seek guidance and answers, and also getting to see what uh, many people, like from example in the governments, decided to do, and getting to know more about their real intentions also, and why they do that, and how can we like uh, avoid many things that they would like to do. And yeah, it was many things, and also listening to other people like having the similar experiences was like something is happening, and we just have to get to know what it is.
Man, that's a great way to put it. Something's happening and we just have to get to know what it is. Okay, cool. I really like that. So maybe we'll kind of start into the next part of this little uh, a segment here about your attention. Maybe, like you said, the isolation collectively gave certain people the time and opportunity to provide their attention. And since it sparks such an attention of, oh my gosh, like things aren't necessarily what we always, and because in a lot of respects for myself, I can only speak from my perspective, but I kind of just had my head down, just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. Didn't really like question a lot of things, per se. But intuitively, when things started being decided for you, you knew like, okay, this isn't right. So, um, and I do say like, yeah, I'm glad you brought up the part about the political leaders and that stuff. And I know we don't talk a lot about this on the show. I know that we all understand it, and we all, like you said, I feel went kind of in similar like isolation and went deep into ourselves a little bit because we had to, you know. And really, I think the people that are finding, at least the people I know that I'm attracting in this time frame, is they're very sovereign individuals. And the people who I can tell really are still attached to those different things, whether it be geopolitical. And here recently, the whole President Trump, I guess, somebody tried to shoot at him or something. And again, not to get too far into it, but like, I just know automatically it's just a dog and pony show. Like, it's just, they just want to capture your attention. That's it. And then it gives it power. And if nobody gave it attention, really, like, it wouldn't have the power at all that it has. So, well, let's just flow right into this next part. Thank you for the introduction. I agree with like everything you said. It resonates wholeheartedly. And I'm really, really glad to make that connection with you, Francisco. And I, from my own perspective and my own messages and my own spiritual experience, there's a reason a lot of us that are finding each other now in these ways globally, it's because often rarely, you would have had two SAR seeds like with that kind of energy, like placed that close together, if that makes sense. So energetically, like, we have to be all spread around. So, especially in the beginning, but we will anchor, that energy, that attention towards more positive things. So, all right, well, let's get into this segment. I'm going to start off with a little bit of more kind of the background of where I started getting into, understanding that, what our attention goes to, there is an energetic component behind it, in this 3D realm. Really, the science behind attention and reality. Let's start with the science. The two-slit experiment is one of the most famous experiments in quantum mechanics, demonstrating how observation affects particles. Here's how it works. The two-slit experiment, when particles such as electrons are fired at a barrier with two slits, they create an interference pattern on a screen behind the barrier, indicating they behave like waves. However, when scientists place a detector to observe which slit the particles pass through, the particles behave like particles rather than waves, and the interference pattern disappears. This suggests that the act of observation collapses the wave function, turning potential states into a single observed reality. This experiment reveals a critical truth: when we give something our attention, we bring it into focus, influencing the unified field of energy around us through quantum entanglement. Essentially, our reality is shaped by where we direct our focus. Creating your own holographic structure. Moving from the scientific to the metaphysical, let's discuss how humans create their own holographic structures. This means that our thoughts and intentions from a unique reality, how focusing on specific thoughts or attentions brings them into our conscious awareness and physical experience. The idea that the universe can be seen as a hologram, where each part contains information about the whole. Our thoughts are powerful. They send out frequencies into the universe. When you set an intention, you create a ripple effect, and the universe responds in kind. This response might come as opportunities, challenges, or insights. The power of intention and frequency. Let's delve deeper into the power of intention and frequency. Your actions reflect your intentions, and the energy you emit through thoughts and intentions sets a frequency that the universe matches over time. Intention setting. Clarity. Be clear and specific about what you want. Vague intentions produce vague results. Visualization. Imagine your attention as already fulfilled. Visualize the details and the emotions you'll feel. Affirmations. Use positive affirmations to reinforce your intentions. Gratitude. Feel gratitude for your intention as if it has already happened. Consistency. Regular focus on your intention without obsessing over it. Frequency and vibration. Positive thoughts and emotions. Maintaining a high vibration means cultivating positive thoughts and emotions. Research shows that emotions like love, joy, and gratitude have higher vibrational frequencies. Mindfulness and meditation. Practices like mindfulness and meditation help maintain a high vibrational state by reducing stress and promoting inner peace. Healthy living. Physical health impacts vibrational frequency. Eating nutritious food, exercising, and getting enough sleep are crucial. Even when the universe shows you a negative pattern or challenge, it's an opportunity for growth. These responses are mirrors reflecting your inner state, offering a chance to learn and evolve. The last part here into the scientific kind of approach is the quantum entanglement and its implications. Another fascinating phenomenon is quantum entanglement. This occurs when two particles become entangled, meaning their states are interconnected no matter the distance between them. Changes in one particle instantaneously affect another. I have 3 case studies here, and I'll probably just provide links or something here to them. But this is kind of like Einstein's spooky action at a distance, and then in the 80s, they were actually able to start proving quantum entanglement. And then recently, I read MIT researchers did one where they sent them, I think, the electron like 7 miles away from each other. And instantaneously, when they rotated one, the other one, there's no lag. It like instantaneously did at the same time. So that's the most recent one I know, like I think 2015 or something. So, the quantum entanglement shows that at a fundamental level, everything in the universe is interconnected. When we set an intention, when we set an intention or focus our attention, it's like we're turning into a specific frequency that resonates throughout this interconnected web of energy. So, all right. So, that's kind of a lot of information. And I will say, sometimes on this show, I've had some people kind of say, "Oh man, I wish this part maybe could have explained a little bit more in detail." And there are literally like some of the stuff I'm referencing. You could go watch like several documentaries or things, and we will put stuff here for the people, but that's not the focus of this show. The focus is how people like you and I are actually interacting with the universe, like how we're actually seeing these principles work in our conscious reality so that we can kind of awaken or show other people what they actually already know. We already know these things. And like what you said about like, you had this inclination that you weren't necessarily like those people who were more spiritual or could channel or feel things, but then you started to kind of realize that you had your own special gifts. And I think that that's more of what we want to focus on here, is empowering the individual through these practices, because when people are giving these tools, they're going to come on here and they're going to go, wow, this stuff works. Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like you start putting it to the test and you create the action. It's like, I'm seeing these positive changes. I'm seeing these things in my physical reality change. So, kind of starting with that, is there anything you want to talk about on the quantum mechanics kind of science stuff behind it that isn't necessarily so rooted in the spiritual concepts of it? Because I know we'll get into those later, like the synchronizations. But is there anything else?
Yeah, I've learned that the the two photon double slit experiment was actually started in the 1800s by I think it's Thomas Young. So that's when we can see that how back in time they were already like getting to know these things in the 1800s. So it's something that people have always like felt curious about. So it's interesting to see that how people have discovered new things, and now that they talk more about the quantum field and how you can also the holographic field and how you can attract things to your reality.
The double slit experiment defies our understanding. It involves a laser shooting beams of light particles called photons at a screen with 2 parallel slits. If we mark all the spots where the photons hit the second wall, we should expect to see 2 strips to correspond with the 2 slits. But that's not what we see. Instead, we see an alternating pattern of light and dark bands. This is characteristic of the behavior of waves that pass through both slits simultaneously, interfering with each other to create the pattern on the second screen. The bright lines are where the top of waves meet, resulting in a more intense or brighter area on the screen. The darker bands are where the top of one wave meets the bottom of another, so they cancel each other out, resulting in a less intense or darker area on the screen. Here is a photo of a real interference pattern. The original double slit experiment was conducted in 1801 by British polymath Thomas Young. Since then, it's been performed with various types of particles, including electrons, and they were found to behave in the same way. This phenomenon occurs even if the photons are fired one at a time, which suggests that the photon is interfering with itself as it passes through both slits at once. Physicists were so stumped that they decided to observe which slit the particle went through. And that's when things get really weird. When scientists used a measuring device to observe the slit that each photon passed through, the interference pattern disappeared, and the photons started behaving like particles. Instead of the spectrum of light and dark bands, we see two bright bands, indicating that the photons chose one slit or the other. So light can display characteristics of both particles and waves, known as wave-particle duality. It appears that light decides to behave as a wave when it's not being watched, and acts like a particle when it is being measured. The mere act of observing which slit it went through changed the behavior of the photons, almost as if they were aware they were being watched. It's kind of like how in a video game, the environment and objects only load when the player focuses on or interacts with them. The entire world isn't rendered all at once, allowing the game to save processing power and optimize resources. Likewise, light seems to behave like waves, but when we observe it, it's as if we're loading its properties, causing it to change and act like particles. Physicist Richard Feynman famously said, "The double slit experiment is absolutely impossible to explain in any classical way, and has in it the heart of quantum mechanics. In reality, it contains the only mystery." The most widely accepted theory to explain this phenomenon comes from physicist Niels Bohr, who proposed that particles like photons don't have definite properties until they're observed. So in the case of light, photons exist in a wave-like form representing a range of possible positions until they are observed. When we measure or observe the particle, we force it to choose a definite state, behaving like particles. This is called the Copenhagen interpretation, named in honor of Bohr's home city. However, to this day, no one knows why observing a particle causes its behavior to change. Not everyone was a fan of his theory. Einstein disagreed that particles could be in multiple states at once until observed. He was uncomfortable with the inherent randomness of such an interpretation, and famously said, "God does not play dice with the universe." Einstein believed that the universe followed a consistent set of rules, like how his general relativity theory predicted the motion of planets around the sun. He spent his later years trying to develop a unified theory that explained everything in the universe, but he didn't succeed. Physicists recently conducted a variation on the double slit experiment. In April 2023, researchers at Imperial College London swapped out the screen with two slits for a transparent material used in smartphone screens called ITO. They first fired a laser beam at the material. When a second laser was directed at the material and pulsed super quickly in quadrillionths of a second, it caused the material to become temporarily reflective. The interaction of laser 2 with the material changed the frequency and therefore the color of the light from laser 1 that was reflected off the material. This experiment shows that by manipulating time rather than space, they were able to create interference patterns similar to the interference observed in the original double slit experiment. There are certain things in life we take for granted. If you don't get enough sleep, you'll feel tired and groggy. If you drive recklessly, you're more likely to get into an accident. But sometimes there are principles that govern our lives that we just can't explain. The perplexing result of the double slit experiment is up for interpretation, with some suggestions that this is evidence our world could be programmed. So far, not even the best scientific minds can explain the bizarre behavior of particles, at least not yet.
And it's interesting because I've noticed like many synchronicities. Like for example, I saw that you found a video. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where they talked about they mentioned that phrase of where energy goes, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So it's something that we have been talking about these past few days, and then you find it also in on Instagram. So it's like an interesting synchronicity.
Yeah, it's like what they say, man. It's like the waves are collapsing, right? Because like now you're thinking about it that way, and so is Vince, and then it's kind of like now our realities start kind of collapsing that wave more collectively. Like that's the way I look
Yeah,
at it, you know, and it does really happen that way. So, and it is cool because I meant to say that like Francisco came up with the name of the show. So we were talking when we first met, and he said that, and I knew right then you were the guy to like have on here for this episode because for whatever reason, I I feel a little bit from people in a sense of like more character and like I feel like you are very I just feel like you're very more in touch with the energy and the space and nature and the interconnected of it things around you. So that's what I've always gotten from your energy, even just meeting you like this. Um, so I knew that this would be the best episode for you to have on because that's what it is. Like you said, everything's so interconnected.
yeah, and I've got to like meditate about this topic of attracting things to your reality, and what I was shown that it was like you are like in your mind you are in a library, and then you decide to pick certain book, and the content of it you will start like seeing it in your reality, like you are able to choose what to see in front of you. It's not like random things happen to you. It's always been like you've been attracting things to your life this whole time. So yeah, it's interesting to like uh, testing the universe, how far it can go in that sense, and uh, also getting to test it and see how fast you can manifest stuff, and or how many things you can manifest in your life.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and you know, like let me ask you real quick. Let's stop. What is manifesting to you? Because you know, in a spiritual community, we see that so that range is so broadly used. And I know in the beginning when I would see it a lot used, a lot of people are like manifesting money, manifesting this different life. So what's when you say manifesting, like what is that to you?
Mm, it will be like materializing something that you would like to get. Yeah, like also proving to the universe that you deserve what you want to have in your life, because first it's important to like also give so you can receive back, because it's not always gonna be like you receiving everything you want. You also have to give away and prove that you deserve what you want to manifest in your life.
Man, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. So basically, all I hear is making sure that whatever intentions you're setting out, that your actions back that up, just like it kind of it did say in the introduction is, and I've learned that through my own spiritual practice is, you know, I kind of analogize a lot of things and not to pick on people who do this, but this is common in my culture where they go to church and they pray for health, but then they right after church they go to you know, a place where they eat terrible and then they just go home and sleep all afternoon. And it's kind of one of those things like to me, you're getting vague results or you're not going to get results because your action about health doesn't match your intention, you know? Uh, and I will say for myself, like manifesting, if people want to call it things of abundance, abundance can come in many forms. It can come in a new relationship or friendship, you know,
It's
that
not
gives you
always money, right?
exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
sometimes it can be money
yeah,
if it's going to be used for certain things because you know, I know now, like if I was gifted a pile of money, I would do a lot different things I'd do with it than I would have before 2020, you know? And so, but what I was going to say is I think also the intention, especially the way our universe responds in this holographic structure, is the more omnipresence and the more like omnipresence that intention and those actions are, the more manifestation, like power and energy that is actually created is kind of been my understanding. So at least what I've seen in results. So if whatever I'm really trying to manifest is for the betterment of the whole, it seems to like kind of speed up a little bit more. Like the wave seems to, I don't know, it just seems to pull it in a little bit quicker, I guess you'd say, than it usually does. So before we get too far ahead on the science part too, I will say, for those that are kind of just starting to understand some of this, and we won't have a ton of time to always like exactly go through each experiment or whatever. A part of the journey is the fun thing is you get to look it up and you get to understand it in your own perspective and you get to put it together. And then, how does that integrate or how does that have meaning in your life? But before we get too far along, that's when I reference like the two slit experiment is a wave to a particle. So everybody has to kind of think about it like that. Like this is how I try to layer it so that I can understand it better is think of our universe and think of dimensions as like octaves. And you have this set of octaves and these physical elements can have a frequency inside those octaves. So, that's where you can kind of get into. So if everything in our physical existence is eventually a wave, and I do have in here where we can reference Walter Russell's wavelength spiral and frequency of matter.
Hello and welcome to the University of Science and Philosophy. Today we will be briefly explaining the differences between the Russell periodic chart of the elements and the Mendeleev chart of the elements. Here you see the Mendeleev chart of the elements. This was first published in 1869. It contains 118 elements by current modern day standards. It's arranged by atomic weight, and it includes a variety of information regarding whether a specific element is a metal or non-metal. The noble gases are contained in a column on the right-hand side, and we see that hydrogen is the very first element of this chart. Here we see the Russell periodic chart of the elements, number 1. This was first published in 1926. In Walter Russell's book, The Universal One. It was originally published as a 10-octave chart, later revised to a 9-octave chart. It contains 121 elements, so more elements than the Mendeleev chart. The distinguishing feature of this arrangement of the elements is that it's progressing by its tonal positions within an octave. So we can think of the elements in Walter's depicting to be in every sense musical tones. For instance, the root note or the root of the key would be the inert gas elements such as helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and so forth. And from these inert gas tonal root notes, the elements are projected or made to be harmonics of the fundamental. So, for instance, carbon in its octave is the 5th or amplitude of the root, and then the other elements would be divisions or multiples of the fundamental. So we can see a big difference in the way that the elements are arranged. Also to note, every element Walter Russell considered to be metallic, excepting carbon, which is equally male and equally female, or bisexual as he called it, and that would mean that carbon is the only non-metal in this chart. In chart number 2 we see the same information as chart number 1. It's just a different perspective. So if we see back here in chart number 1, this is really a side perspective view of a opening vortex, or like seeing a tornado or cyclone from its side. Whereas in this chart number 2, we see that actually we're looking down from the top down into the cyclone or vortex, very much like watching water go down your drain. I'll also note here that the elements in the hydrogen octave, known as ethlogen and bibogen, are actually the common day equivalent of tritium and deuterium. And that Nobel Prize was given to Urey in 1930 for the discovery of those elements, but Walter Russell had actually lectured to Union Carbide and Westinghouse and all the major universities and major corporations doing research into hydrogen at the time in the late 1920s, and had actually predicted the existence of these elements. So he told them to sort of poke around in the hydrogen octave and they would find other elements. But of course, since they had numbered hydrogen as number 1 on their chart, they could not say that they had found other hydrogen elements, so they simply renamed them to tritium and deuterium, which are, in their science, would be an isotope. Walter Russell's version of isotopes don't start to appear until the 6th octave after scandium. And this is when we have a split tone, which is what in Walter's science we call an isotope. So it's different from the modern science view, which is really an isotope would have a differing number of neutrons and a different atomic weight. Walter's version would be a split tone, like what you have between 2 white keys of a piano. You have a black key, which is a split in between them. And finally, we see Walter gave us another way to look at his arrangement of the elements, which is as a 9-octave harp of the universe. We can look at this very much like the fretboard of a guitar and notice that carbon is in the exact midpoint, and so carbon exists halfway through the entire periodic chart. You can see it's exactly 4.5 octaves to carbon from the 1st octave and exactly 4.5 from the middle of the 9th back to the carbon is 4.5. So carbon exists exactly at the midtone or the midpoint or the 5th of the entire 9-octave chart. And as such, it's the only true sphere and the only true cube crystallized around it as its cube wave field. It's the ultimate maturation point or point of ultimate density, and carbon, as we know, has the highest melting point at 3,600 degrees centigrade. So we can think of all the elements mature from inert gas seeds toward carbon, and then once we reach carbon, we start to unwind and we throw out the heavier and heavier, more dense elements such as plutonium and neptunium in the 9th octave. And we always begin where we end, so to begin again. And so Walter's chart is sort of an actual scientific way of showing the continuance of all the elements in their life cycles, from their journey from birth to maturation to ultimately death to be reborn again.
And I'll reference this here in just a little bit more in depth, but that's where the wave becomes a particle when it's observed, right? So just understand it at just a real simple term like that, is that everything produced in this realm is a frequency. And then when it's observed, it becomes a physical structure, a molecular structure. So we in my school learn the periodic table as elements, right? Atomic, atoms at a subatomic levels. But in reality, what we should have been probably learning is Walter Russell's wavelength spiral periodic element that he did. And the way that I understand this, and we will put some stuff in here too, some links for people, is you look at it like a spiral, like you're looking down, and hydrogen's at the center. And as that octave in our realm as those octaves increase, there's a entropic effect. So the further some of those elements get away from hydrogen and they're spiraling down, the more volatile, like radioactive, and there was one other, radioactive, and they become more volatile. So that helps me understand my physical universe at a little bit deeper level and what I'm actually like physically experiencing. And I know it's hard for people to put together, but if you look at it like any space you're in is made up of elements that are of a frequency that are put together and they form their own frequency, whether it be a floor, a chair, right? So, or stones, like at Stonehenge, or, the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where they can bang on the stones and they have a certain frequency. So these things make sense in our natural environment, and we are connected to that. And we have literally like severed that connection because, for one, we just don't even have the gnosis of it. Like it's not a fundamental basis of knowledge and understanding from people right now. So, when we are putting on a title that says where your attention goes, your energy flows, we legit don't like, what do I try to say here is, we're talking literal sense, not figuratively. It's literally like it's frequency. So when your thought is sent out, like you were just saying, from my understanding, and you provide a lot of action to provide that, and it may not happen in a year, especially from what I've understood. If it's something you really want, it's something kind of big, and there's almost like the more energy you put into it, and then there's more energy exploded out of it at the end. Those usually take a lot more time. Those are not going to, and so you may not understand it. And like you said, I've understood it too. That I'll put this into context. The other day, I was driving to go skydive, and I got behind a slow car, and it was 20 minutes ahead of schedule, and I only had 7 miles to go. So I knew the universe is like, okay, you have plenty of time. Like, just relax, enjoy the countryside. It's a nice day, you know? And I just knew it was going to have meaning. I just knew it. And the second I pulled in the parking lot, a sweet older lady got out and was commenting on my truck. And it was just a nice, pleasant exchange. And some people might just say that's coincidence. That's not coincidence. Mm-hmm. The universe knew for me to pull. And you know what? It wasn't about me. Maybe she just needed to be reminded that there are nice people, and that she, just, whatever it is, maybe she needed me in that situation. It wasn't about me. And again, that omnipresence for myself, that's how I start to look at it. So even in my own journey, wherever I'm supposed to be might not be for my journey. Maybe a part of my journey is being there for somebody else, because I've had a lot of people there to help me, in certain aspects, or give me a deeper understanding of something. So I look at that thing as at the interconnectedness of what you said and how I manifest. That's how I manifest. When people ask me, like, what is manifestation to you? It is clear intention, backed up by direct action, and understanding that there's not an expectation of outcome of when or how those things will manifest or what my abundance will be. But I know that I'll be taken care of. And it really is as simple as that. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to let go of expectations, because sometimes we are too much into how how your manifestation will come and when, and sometimes it's not even uh, good for you, like not like you said now, but in due time. So it's like you also have to demonstrate the universe that you trust that your manifestation will come, maybe not today, not tomorrow, but when in divine timing. So it's important to let go of attachments of how everything should be, because yeah, sometimes some things will come after, because it's always in divine timing. So you you have to have patience and also trust that you will have that what you want.
For supporting that. And again, we're complete resonance there, because that's, what you said. And my direct thought is that's the attachment is also the control. People want to control that journey. They want to have they want to know exactly how it's supposed to go. And it's like, then why have free will? Why not be a robot? Like if you have no surprises along the journey and these blissful enjoyments, and oh, this is what the universe gave you today, cool, and sometimes that might be some suffering, and understanding that might be some sadness for the day, but sitting in it for a while and then integrating it and then thinking about it's going to lead to something positive, which it does, usually leads to a better understanding of something. And then I'm not typically as sad about that element or thing situation anymore, or it doesn't have as much attention or energy towards it in the same context. So it allows me to be more balanced, really, at the end of the day. So, great, man. This is great stuff. So, okay, cool. So, yeah, so Walter Russell's spiral, that's the other thing that if you think about it, it provides just another element. And I do know in some of my studies, they said, well, there's actually a significance to the number 8. And it made me think of you, because today's episode 8, synchronicity, is that it's basically about if I don't want to mess this up, but it only went his spiral element table only provides a consistent basis for the first 56 elements up to calcium. And it's there's a division by 8 that's involved in that, which doesn't mean, and a lot of people look at that and they go, well, his stuff wasn't accurate. It's like, no, it was accurate to that element, and then they've actually took it a step further at that element. There's a lot of elements beyond that are, again, volatile and radioactive, and they're not negotropic, so, or closer to the noble gases. So again, without getting too far into that, so that just made me think about they wrote this guy off again in the 1800s. So you find a lot of our information, like you referenced earlier, comes out of that era, and they've literally squashed so much of that information to keep it from us, the masses.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but moving on from, I guess, more of the physical stuff, we can get into some of the practical applications and insights. But really where I'd like to go, and I'm actually probably just going to skip the historical context into it, because I know I usually go there a lot, but this one had some, but not a lot. And I think really where this conversation's been driving is really, I'd like to talk more about synchronizations. Because I know that me and you've referenced it a lot before. We referenced it on the last episode. I've referenced it a lot in my own spiritual journey and what that really means. So, for anybody that doesn't know, when we're referencing a synchronization to me is basically when the universe is literally speaking back. It's that frequency that it's throwing it back at you like a boomerang from somewhere, some nexus point in this quantum structure. It's sending you a signal. And usually when I have a synchronization and I know it right away. And anymore, I don't even, there's maybe a few every now and then that I intuitively go, okay, was I confirmatious bias looking for it, just trying to confirm that bias that you're having these. And that's where a lot of people get kind of, pulled back, that, oh, this is just a coincidental type of stuff. It doesn't have any meaning. But you start to realize that's not true, because there's a lot of things that happen. So, so for synchronizations, it's something that is meant for that individual. So when people think of like angel numbers, I know that is a synchronization for a lot of people because that is one of the first things for myself. And I feel others, when they start understanding things at a little deeper level, they're drawn to that, so it's out there. There's a lot of context on it. Again, if that's where your energy, that's where your attention goes, that's where the energy's flowed. So that synchronization is going to have meaning to you and can still have meaning to me, can have meaning to Francisco. But typically you're going to have a collection of meanings that are to the individual. And that's the way I've understood it. So I have certain ones, like one of mine is Texas license plates. And I'm not
Yeah.
shitting you, Francisco. I was sitting there driving at a stoplight and I was like, all right, I'm going to play a game. There's like 20 cars and I'm taking a left. So I'm sitting there at the stoplight. There's like 20 cars to my right in two different lanes. And I'm like, one of these is going to be a Texas license plate. And I'm just watching, boom, boom. One car goes, like the last couple, there goes Texas license plate. And people say, like, oh, it's just so lucky, whatever. Well, after that, I had a Texas license plate that said also 666. And this was in a matter of like a couple days. So to me, that's like two waves collapsing. That's like what I call like synchronization stacking. So to me, when I get into that frame of mind, it's like I know intuitively, like whatever the universe is telling me, I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there, doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And that's all I tell myself. And that's it. And I just kind of look around and observe and like, cool. But that's what synchronizations are to me. I have some detailed ones that maybe we'll get into a little bit more, but like I'd like to hear what that means to you.
Yeah, well, at first, what in my spiritual journey, the synchronicities were the first thing because I started to see many angel numbers, and at the point that I noticed that they were not coincidences, that they they were there for a reason. So I started uh, like doing my research of what did these numbers mean, and the like a special message that's behind them, and also uh, for example, that like you said, many times I'm like driving, I see the plates and there are angel numbers in them. So I think these are like confirmations of the universe that it's listening at what you think and say and in your intentions. And yeah, for me, it's like a way of cheering me up, like saying you're in the right path. We are guiding and supporting you. And also, sorry, it's like getting to see behind the what is this, getting to discover that things can perceive you.
Hey
So
Francisco,
it's interesting.
you cut out a lot there real quick. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the last few sentences?
Yeah, like uh, these synchronicities are like a confirmation that you actually can perceive things that are like outside the like what you can see. So it's like what I was mentioning before, like the you can perceive things that you cannot see. So everything like in this invisible field, you can also perceive it, and that's like an interesting way to get our attention and to letting us know that like we are on the right path and we are being guided and all protected as well.
Yeah, and I will say too, it gives me a thought about I've done some heavy meditations, and when I kind of came out of those heavy states, like, I remember some of the messages were like, don't, it's kind of like, as you drift back down to this dense place, uh, don't forget that, like, almost so many things in our holographic structure are actually put there to think you're crazy in seeing these things. That is actually another perspective, if that makes sense. So what I'm really trying to say is that, I've heard a lot of people who start having more spiritual things happen to them. In the beginning, a lot of them say they thought they were going crazy. That is a very common theme. And so that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is that, remember that, like, there is a lot of things in this universe, the way it's constructed now, because of this collective wave that globally we've all created. If you think about a global consciousness, so a global attention, right? A global structure that we're providing. But don't let it think that you're going crazy. And for me, like, in the beginning, I will say I had a lot of bird activity, lots and lots of bird. Like, I'd be driving down the highway and I would see a freaking turkey vulture, like, kind of off in a field, and he'd kind of start flying in my direction. I'd be like, okay, the second I get up to him, I guarantee he's going to go right over my truck. And I'm doing like 80. So, there's physics. Obviously, we got to meet at the same intersecting time. And it would happen all the time. And then I remember one time going to Colorado, and I told some friends about this story. They all thought I was crazy. But, like, I was driving at night, and I was kind of one of those moods. I was just like, I don't know. I was real deep into thoughts by myself. I was going out there just to kind of get away. And during a time in my life that, I had a lot of other things going on. And this owl, like, just swooped down, man, late at night, right next to my truck. And he just glided there next to me for a minute, man. And his wingspan was massive. I mean, he was a big bird. And I just remember thinking that, like, wow, that was so cool. And, like, nobody will believe it the way that's the thing. You can try as hard as you want to get others to understand it, but they won't. And that's okay. Like, they're not there. They're not you. They don't understand it. They're not literally collapsing the wave in front of you. You are.
The message is not for them, it's for you.
Yeah, exactly. And finding your own messages. And like you said earlier in the show, people understanding that, like, nobody here is superhuman, and, like, everybody here on Earth has these capabilities right now, so, like, everybody can do this, and everybody can start to see these things, like, progress in their life, and then actually start to have meaning. So, and then to me, that's when it really starts catching fire, because, like, when people like me and you understand it, because we've spent the time with intention, we spent the time with some action, and again, it's not a hierarchy. There are people ahead of us that understand it at a deeper level. It's just really more about, like, how can I take these practices and this knowledge and integrate it into my existence? Because even if we get caught up on understanding, like, so much of our history, I know in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I dived really, really deep into ancient cultures. And that's when I really started questioning my reality, because I just knew I was being lied to left and right. When you look at ancient cultures and a lot of the religions and the overlapping stories, you just knew, like, it doesn't add up. But even then, like, what we're experiencing now, ancient cultures wouldn't be able to, like, they don't have the technology that we have right now. Like, they what they're using. They're not up against, like, this global conscious structure that we have right now, where everybody's so worried about Trump and, what he's, whatever happens to him, instead of, like, what happens to their own spiritual nature, where they're at observing their reality every day, instead of giving those things their attention and realizing that, like, dang, if I sit on Instagram and give all this attention to just this like Trump and political thing, you're actually, whether you believe you're in the right or wrong, your attention is what's providing the energy and fueling the fire. And so when you step away from it, you start providing other practices in your life that go more inside and introspection and giving that your intention. That's when manifestations, that's when synchronizations, that's when all these things that we're talking about really, really start to have more meaning. And, so birds is a big one for me. It still happens to me all the time. Now I'm starting to have more with just nature in general. But that's for another conversation and more of my own personal journey right now, which you got to hear some of that on the last episode. I'm really glad you got to. That was really impactful for me, and I don't want to make this part of that this episode, but I had to take like a whole week to. I didn't even rewatch that last episode, Francisco, for almost like a whole week. Like I just watched it the second time because the things I heard, I was like, I just knew it was going to take me a while to process it and like integrate whatever it was meaning into my life. And synchronizations and manifesting, I think, are kind of similar. Sometimes you just need to give things in this structure time to process. Maybe that thought or that frequency you sent out is coming back from a very, very far distance, space, time, however you want to put it. But maybe that's what it is. So provide some patience for that as well. So are there any other synchronizations? I know you mentioned angel numbers. I know last episode, I'd like to hear, do you have any bird stories or any stories in nature?
Yeah, well, when you were mentioning about the birds, that's what I have in my mind as well. I was thinking about synchronizations related to animals and like the spiritual meaning of animals showing up in front of you, like the owl that you mentioned, uh, even butterflies or bugs. It's comes to my reality very frequently because I like going out to nature, and uh, it's like these are like spirit guides or spirit animals that have their own meaning for everyone specifically. So, uh, well, I also have my owl story that uh, a couple of years ago, uh, a friend made this reading for me, like this uh, past lives reading, and she mentioned like an owl that has been uh, like a companion in every life. So
Hey,
some of them
Francisco,
at night,
you
but
you you were losing you a little bit. What was that part of your story about the owl? She was reading a story to you about a past life. All right, everyone. Sorry about that. Sometimes, we do have some technical difficulties, and I've actually learned along this journey when you do start vibrating a little bit higher, there's some electronical things around you that, well, you'll notice they just sometimes don't tend to work the way you want to. So you just got to deal with it the best you can. And I'm in the middle of America and Francisco's in El Salvador. So let's, be thankful that we can actually still communicate this way on a global scale. So I'm still grateful for that. But Francisco, you were telling us we were kind of into the synchronizations, and you were telling us your owl story. Uh,
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I had this friend that did like a past life reading for me, and she was mentioning an owl companion that I've always had, like from life to life. So uh, on this life, I haven't met that owl, but I just realized that it lives like in the woods that are in front of my house. Uh, there's like a hole in the middle of the trees, and I know that that's where it lives because like I don't know, like a couple of weeks ago, I was with my friends, like in on the second floor of my house, and suddenly a big owl came to us, and it went like in the middle, in between us, and it almost hit one of my friends, and it was shocking because I didn't expect that, and I haven't met that owl until that day. And a couple of days ago, you sent a video of an owl, or maybe more than one. So I got to identify that same sound at
Yes.
night in the woods that are in front of my house. So I know that it's that owl, like saying, "I'm over here, I'm watching you from very close to you." So I know that it's related to uh, like a past life that I had that was living in the woods, maybe as a shaman or a druid. But yeah, it's all connected. So it's interesting to see how, well, they're not exactly past lives, but parallel lives, because everything's happened in the eternal present. So it's interesting to see how everything gets connected, and how you get some clues about these other lives that you're having at the same time. So uh, it's all about like focusing your attention on small details that help you see how everything can be linked to everything else. So this owl and some other birds and animals, uh, what they mean to me is like, well, they all have different meanings. So I like to do my research and see what each of them means. For example, the owl can mean wisdom, um and also uh, they are able to turn their head around like 360. So that will mean like having every perspective of one thing from uh, one point. So it's, yeah, it's very, like, I'm very grateful for all the signs that I receive, and every time that I receive a confirmation and some clues about the guidance that I have and what I should do at certain time. And yeah, it's on a daily basis. It's almost like I see many animal with specific messages, or the angel numbers we were talking about, and even the small details that my intuition says, um, focus on this, like uh, it's mind-blowing how you can connect everything. So it's like daily, on a daily basis, how to notice the messages that you receive constantly.
Yeah, I agree. That's the details and the intuition, like you said. That's, I think that's key. I've recently had some people, that's been a big thing of their intention is they want to be more in touch with their intuition. And my understanding of the intuition too is the Hindus, they had the Manipura. was big on that, which, to me kind of falls in line with the signs of the owls in wisdom, because, intuitively the owl, like, I love the 360 concept that you mentioned, the perspective of the focal point of one, but you are able to see like this macrocosm, and that's significant. And when I started learning about the different symbols that some of the birds meant to historically, it gave me a little bit deeper understanding. And there's a cardinals always kind of come around my house, and I'm pretty convinced my grandfather, he'd always loved seeing them cardinals. So to me, that's like when you say like spirit guides or people mention that, to me, that's what it means. And, so again, I just know in that moment, I'm really doing whatever I'm supposed to be doing at that moment, even in thought, even if that thought is about my grandfather, and that's the connection that I think that a lot of those, if it's more of a spirit guide kind of synchronization, or what I like to say, a reverberation back from the universe, if it's done through a spirit guide, through nature, that's another form of a synchronization. And, besides just physically seeing numbers or physically seeing something else that makes sense to you, because I have so many bird stories. I mean, my friends used to literally, and I was learning to skydive at the time, but they would call me the Birdman. And, but it was because of the bird activity. And I would show them all these pictures, and just, so I could really go, and owls, like, yeah, that video I sent you, like, bro, these owls come and visit me, and all the time behind my house. And not just there, when I go up north to the farm, like, they're there too. And I've even came down here at my house and walked my neighborhood, and they were out, calling. And then they followed me to a tree I'm not kidding you. It was right above me in a tree as I'm walking underneath it, and it's hooting and hollering. And I'm like, this is insane, And again, it's that feeling of that holographic matrix has kind of programmed me to think that those things are not real, that those things are not happening, that they're just a coincidence of this, like, I would say, like, a very chaotic pattern in the universe. And it's not like something that I had written down in my notes that I could have talked about a little bit further, was when we were talking about the more of the science behind it, is in Walter Russell's, again, his wavelength spiral periodic elements, is you get into the Fibonacci sequences, and that's just fractal patterns in nature. So again, like, these things have order, so the way that the universe is speaking to us has order. And that's how I kind of view it. Like you're saying, it has to have order to me, though, because I'm the observer of my own reality. So I could try to make anybody else understand this. Like with all these birds, I could show them as many videos as I want, and you'll still get some people like, yeah, that's cool. Well, I don't, what I mean? And it's because it's not because they don't understand or they're spiritually inept. It's literally, they're not in your observation point. So it doesn't have the same meaning, and it's not supposed to. So when you just understand that like, if you need validation, the universe will give you validation. Like, I've had that. I don't know if that's happened to you, but I've had validation parts too, where I'm like, okay, crap, that's the Texas license plate in the cars, like, going by, like, out of 20 cars. Okay, I named it before it happened, and then it happened. That's a pretty odd thing. So, but it has meaning, and it has meaning to me. And then when I realize it has meaning to me, and I don't need it validated by others, right? But it is cool to talk about. It is cool to understand, and it is cool to have context with others that start experiencing it the same way, because it does work that way physically, like it does that energetic feedback loop. So like, we start seeing it and understanding it a little bit better. And then what I wanted to get into this last part here and get your takes on this is, now when we start talking about like manifesting, synchronizations, where your attention goes, the energy literally flows. Like there's literally an energetic value, is the collective consciousness aspect. So always coming from an omnipresence point of view, but I'll read these little inserts about that. So the impact of collective consciousness. When individuals begin to understand how their universe operates and learn to consciously collapse their own wave functions through focused intention, and a remarkable phenomenon can occur on a collective level. Each person, by aligning their thoughts and intentions with their desired outcomes, contributes to a larger wave of conscious awareness. This individual practice of mindful intention setting and positive focus not only transforms personal reality, but also influences the collective consciousness, creating that collective wave. As more individuals begin to consciously shape their realities, these individual waves of focused energy combine, creating a powerful collective wave. This collective wave has the potential to bring about profound changes in society, fostering a more harmonious and interconnected world. Synergy and amplification. The collective energy of many individuals focusing on positive change in higher vibrational states can create a synergetic effect, amplifying the impact far beyond what any single person could achieve alone. This is the essence of the transformative power of collective consciousness. When enough people start to understand and apply these principles, we could witness a significant shift towards a more conscious, empathetic, and united world. So, with referencing that, my first thoughts that I get into is like, even right now, we're creating a wave together. So when me and you start getting into a space of this energy and we're sharing these, think of it like, in my understanding, emotions too. Cause like, as we're having this conversation, there's emotions that change, like kind of your heart variation. And from my understanding too, like this is a little bit more deep into it, but like, especially if we were both to get into like really heavy states of bliss and love and compassion, we would be in a very, very high vibrational state together. Because, think about it, like they've done studies, the lowest vibrational state, especially in our culture, that men get into is porn, actually. Is watching a lot of porn and stuff, is the vibration super low, super dense. So collectively, when enough of us, for one, just understand this information, and then we start alchemizing it and practicing it and instituting it, integrating it into our life, and then we do it collectively, that's the next goal. Because like I've said before on the show, something I would want to see done in my society is the education system changed. I know for 40 years I could go sit on a school board and try to like fight all these other red tapes and bureaucracy things that even the second I step out of it, it'll go right back to what it was, or what somebody else's agenda drives it after that. I have no control. But like for education and that, and I don't want to get off a tangent, but when I align myself with others that feel the same, we can then create small communities that align with that concept. So it's not about like changing what's already there. It's about just creating a new wave that we all collapse in together. And that's really it is. And then it just creates more of a vortex. And then to take it a step further on a spiritual contents, I learned this phrase from Vince, thank you, and Niyama, but the egregor, and that is when collective energy levels come together, you create a collective energy that is like a being that has an energetic value. So I'm excited to get into that with the Sun Tribe. I know that is going to be a part of our function as we physically like come together and meet from time to time, and then who knows where it'll go from there. But like that's, to me, is the energy and the representation of how we're going to create true change, and provide these different communities and structures that we want to see. And to take it one step further, and then I'll finish with this of my thoughts on this collective consciousness and these collective waves collapsing. A lot of people in the spiritual community, myself included, for a long time, we've heard that term solar flash. So, with that being said, solar flash to a lot of people means that the sun is changing, that the sun
Mhm.
is, they're paying attention to the Schumann resonance. They're having all these blackout periods. There was one day in there too where like the Schumann resonance showed DNA structures,
Yeah,
which I don't, if you remember that, that was freaking awesome.
like about a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, bro, that was a heavy meditation day for me too. Like it was like I had a super heavy meditation day and I saw that. I was like, whoa, that was cool. Um, but so I've actually started to understand it, I think, from a different perspective. We're so focused on the sun changing us. Well, what if it's the other way around? What if we're creating an egregor of collective consciousness by having these conversations purely by the gnosis? And again, this to me goes back to Gnostics and Templars and why Templars had secret sects to hide information was literally just purely the knowledge. The gnosis and the understanding of this can shape whole worlds, reshape them. And so I think of it that way. I think the sun is changing because we're changing it, not the other way around. And because of my understanding of charge, and we've talked about this too, the moon is here, the earth is here, the sun is here, the Holy Trinity provides an atmosphere that we can inhabit this physical space. So, as spiritual beings, we can come here and have these emotions. But a part of our journey is to wake up, like
Yeah.
legit wake up to what your true purpose is. And synchronizations and wave collapsings are all these reminders that this is how the universe operates. So to me, that's where I go with collective consciousness and waves collapsing, because now what I find in my world happening lately, and this is really recent, I've been on a very kind of lonely spiritual journey because I just, sometimes people talk about this and people who go through this, and you might be able to talk a little bit about this for yourself here in a moment, but you lose some people that you thought at one moment in your life, like, man, there's always be there. And it's because you find out that like, you can't be balanced with however this relationship or this person is in your life, as integrated in your life, and you lose people. So I'm just pretty alone. But recently, I've got to meet a lot of new people online that synergize on this same wavelength. And it's just purely thought and like our intention and how we view our perception of our reality. And I've met other people too that have came to me. And what's cool is like now they're actually kind of they kind of ask me a lot of questions like, John, you're really in depth with this. Like, can you help me out here? And it's really cool because now I actually had a friend the other day who came to me because he was having a very troubling situation a little bit and he just needed a vent. He's like, man, you helped me so much. And like, just by talking, he's like, I've been dealing with this for like a year and a half and I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. And really what I told him was I said, hey man, whatever you can do out of this situation to make it balanced for yourself, do that. It doesn't matter what else it is. And it had to do with his kids and his ex and some legal stuff. And to me, it was, he just needed to kind of let go a little bit, and that there were some things that he wasn't going to be able to control. And, because really he needs to be more whole himself, because when his kids see that and they see that light, they're going to be drawn to it. And they know it. They know it's there. They know and to me, that's how my kids, they pick up on that a lot now that they're getting older. So again, back to the collective consciousness. So with that being said, I truly think that is the thing, is that we're collectively waking up. So the sun's charge is changing because we're actually grounding it here on Earth first, kind of thing. And it's not about what comes first necessarily. It's just, I don't look at it the same way I used to, that a lot of other people did with this whole solar flash. So maybe there still will be a radical shift that we've talked about, but maybe it's because collectively here we understand it, and then boom, there's like a huge wave collapse. And the energies from the sun or whatever, vice versa, they open up. It's just a whole different, reality. It's a whole different set of octaves that maybe we've had before here on Earth. I'm not here to say we have or hadn't back in Atlantis and Lemuria,
Yeah.
but I know what's happening now, and that's all I really care about. So, anyways, I'll step aside. I know that was a long thought process for the collective consciousness perspective of this, but I really do want to get your take on, maybe kind of like the solar flash, what your take is on how these things like intertwine to you collectively in your perception.
Yeah, in these past few years, I've heard a lot of the solar flash, and um, it was very exciting for me to think that someday the sun will send like a huge wave of energy, and that it will change our completely our reality, and we will all be like all blaze and love and peace. And in these past few years, I've learned that we don't have to wait for someone or something to happen in the outside, but the real change has to come within, and that uh, our soul, our inner sun, is the first one that has to like activate, and that would create like a ripple effect on earth, on the sun. So yeah, it has been like a lesson of patience, and also realizing that what you see on the outside, it's a reflection of the inside. So uh, until I am ready like to make my inner sun completely ignite, that's when I will start to see the changes on the outside. So it was like a little mind blowing to think that that solar flash will be caused by us, because we will create that, but it should start within us. So it's like another lesson of, well, more patience, and also to learn that we are so much more capable than we think, and that it's not that we have to expect someone or someone or something to save us, but we are our own saviors. We are in charge of changing our own reality. So it's at the end, it's all inside of us, and it's our own job to do that.
Background energy, and what it would take to cohere that. It's like you've got this unified field, right? Physics says there's 4 fundamental forces, but now we know that they're all made of the same substance. Okay, they're just at different frequencies and wavelength ratios. And so once you get that unified field, the religion of Jesus and Einstein understood, then you have the appropriate challenge of understanding the role of mind among waves. The role of mind among waves is to make that still point where waves can converge non-destructively. And that's called collapse in physics, and it appears to be identical with the very nature of compassion. So this is what we're talking about making your dent in the world, that if you want to have a wave stand, then you have to create that wave in such a way that it's in phase, and the symmetry can nest on a folded surface. Essentially, all immune systems, all soap bubbles, all cell membranes are a folded surface. And to make the wave stand non-destructively on that surface, you have to make your dent in the world, right? For the wave to stand, it has to be in phase. In biophysics, it's called structural stability and morphogenesis. It's the title of a book. It means that all cell membranes exist because the waves which stand on their surface are musical, literally in phase. So measuring that coherence of standing waves is the ability to make matter out of light. That if you have that compressible media and you get a wave standing, then that's called matter. The way it works is In physics, if a wave goes in a line, you call that wave energy. If the same wave were to begin going in a circle, the wavelength divides evenly into the circumference. That's called quantum mechanics. When the wave goes in a circle, that same wave is called mass. Do you know why? It's because when the wave goes in a circle, it stores a little bit of inertia. And in physics, we measure how much inertia is there, and that's the only definition or measurement any physicist has ever had for mass or matter. So literally, God is the feller who taught the wave to go in a circle. Got it? It's that simple. The issue of creation is the ability to move the wave into a circle from a line. When the wave goes in the circle and it then makes the L or phase shift from the circle back to the line, that's called the raising of the Jedi Knight, or the Shem on, the Highward Firestone, or literally the sword in the stone. And that L or phase shift is the origin of the word Elohim, those who were able to make the L or phase shift. And it's as simple as this. If your habit had been to attend to the wave node, which we're calling matter, the waves converge, make a little pressure bubble, go away, and then the pressure and rarefaction happens in the same place every time, just like this picture. The resistance to change of position of that place, that inertia, is called matter. Well, if your habit has been to attend to the wave node, the place where there's compression and rarefaction in the same place, then you're stuck on the cross. Do you see? So if you want to get off your cross, follow me, right? And what you do is you lift your attention from the wave node to the wave itself. But that L or phase shift is a translation of vorticity, a movement of inertia from the circle back to the line. And the spin path which idealizes that, obviously, is the golden mean ratio. It's called optimized translation of vorticity in hydrodynamics. But now have we explained the Sufi koan, which says, only love bends the light, so only love creates. Yeah? You see that if you, in fact, create long wave phi ratio, low phi, love, you make that 0.618, which creates that implosion, that centering force, the suction to the center, which bends the light from the line into the circle. You see? Only love bends the light, therefore only love creates. So this is a little introduction. So that this geometry of these three-dimensional standing waves makes these wave packets, and things come to a head because the ratio of the waves, when it's golden mean ratio, permits adding and multiplying, and we're going to see more pictures of that.
Here are the primary colors are the calibration of the tilt of the photon donut.
So that when waves converge, what happens is they always form a toroidal or donut-shaped magnetic field because, in fact, that is the only self-organizing waveform. There's X and Y and Z axes of spin on the surface of a folded donut, yes? And that X, Y, and Z axis spin superposed means you have three gyroscopes which are perpendicular, and that's called inertial navigation systems at NASA, right? In other words, you can't be pushed around. So when you store inertia in three axes of spin, you in fact create vorticity. And when you connect up those tornadoes, that's called string theory or wormholes. And we're going to talk about how mind can steer tornadoes. And we see that all of physics is made of those compression waves of tornadoes. So this is a three-dimensional model of a compression wave on a folded surface. In this case, it was intended to describe the perpendicular axes of the perpendicular field effects of the, let's call them the perpendicular equators of the galaxy, the solar system, and the Earth. And their relative tilt angle nutates toward 90 degrees. It's called the erection of the Holy Cross in the work by Nick Fiorenza. And so if you see that compression wave converging on the sun, you see why the sun does a solar maxima, an orgasm, the Christians call rapture, which is simply a response to the need to compress, by which we're going to see more about how then stars and planets experience those gravity relations erotically. And so that survival of compression is in fact the test, the appropriate test for immortality. We'll talk more about that. On the bottom right, we see that three axes of spin superposed is 3 dimensions. So dimensions itself is a name for the number of axes of spin you superposed. So by nesting these vortex donuts, we get the Platonic solids and the atomic table. So every time we're talking about one of the Platonic solids or an atom in the atomic table, we're only talking about tornadoes that have learned to stand on their head and
to do that.
Nice, man. Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that, dude. That's such a good way. The inner sun, like, dude, I love it because that's it, man. I listened to Jordan Maxwell on Gaia Network about his symbols, and that's a very good episode that he did, and he breaks down a lot of religion and why there were so many sun god, which we'll just go ahead and reference Ra right now. But there were several sun god religions, and actually the true cross, from my understanding from Jordan Maxwell with his research, the true cross in a lot of that, and you see it early on depicted in the sun, is actually your own personal magnetic cross. It's like your heart variation mixed with your EMF. If that, like, I mean, you're an electrical being, so it's like that cross point that's inside of us. So like you said, that's what they say is the inner sun, and then you have this cross inside of you. It's not about, hate to break it to you Christians, it's not about Jesus being on a cross. So the early stuff paints a way different picture. So man, that falls just in line with what we talk about on here and how we say it, Francisco. That's inner sun, man. That you could do a whole episode on that. Like, I just had a thought, like, how in touch are you with your inner sun? Like, that's super impactful, is we change the inner sun in us, and then we change the sun. And like you said, I don't want to put any future things. I mean, there could be a radical shift. Of course there can. I will say, from my perspective now, I think that really, to cap that, where your attention goes, your energy flows. If you are focused on balancing that inner sun, your conscious reality shifts incrementally, little by little, second by second, minute by minute, day by day, week by week, month by month. And so, like, literally you are forming your reality. And the way I look at it is like this. Like, say you're the owl in the 360 perspective. Thank you. I'll use that analogy. This is perfect. So say you're that owl, you have an endless amount of options all around you, but
Yeah.
where you focus. So if you're focusing on Trump and fear and this election and all this is going to be bad, well, guess what, bro? You might be focusing where your reality goes to war. I mean, that's legit,
Yeah.
where that fear-based, you're going to live in a reality that's war. And I'll reference Bashar. Maybe we can put a little snap on here on the podcast about it, where he's talked about his understanding is that it's like you have two trains right now on Earth, and they're going separate directions. And right now you can see each other, but eventually your vibrational state, so again, your cross, your EMF, you're an electrical being, your vibrational state and your energy and your focus, if you're in the 3D and you're focused on all the war and all the stuff that's just kept it dense, that's going to be where you live consciously. And you, whatever might be involved still in this soul trap karma loop. But to me, the 5D, that's what the representation is that the 5D is you're focused on your inner sun. And those people who are focused on their inner sun are collectively creating a new Earth focused on the inner sun. And then it'll be a community of inner suns. And, then it just implodes from there. And I truly believe that is what, on a physical sense, because of what I've experienced through meditation, and I think, like you said, what we're capable of, and we're far more capable of human beings than people even than I know right now or realize myself. I'm waking up to that more and more myself all the time. So, that is where you get into the things of like telepathy and the ancients. And that's why when people say, oh, well, we've never had this conscious shift into 5D. And it's like, well, how do you know? Like, who said that? I mean, the ancients, if you believe what they did with matter collectively through telepathy or manipulating energy physically somehow, like, because there's things out there. You look at Machu Picchu, the way that they, those stones are cut in. Like, you talk to master masons, like, that's not possible. They're all beveled edges because they're on a nodal point, which is, again, for reference, the magnetic node on the Earth's grid. That's where that pyramid is. So it has a lot of good charge, but they had to build that because of the seismic activity that's usually created in those magnetic nodes on Earth's grid. There's usually a lot of seismic activity. Any architect will tell you you can't build a level straight wall. You have to be on a beveled edge because it has to have a little bit of flex or it'll just tip over.
No.
So they knew back then to build the stones, not only in these crazy intricate patterns where you can't even shove a fucking sheet of paper or a laser through. They also knew to build it on a beveled edge that's cut into a certain way so that when they had seismic activity. And then you could even get into some of the granite and stone was like found to be 200 miles away on like another mountaintop. It's like, there's no way. You know, these people didn't, this wasn't for shelter. So again, we can get into the ancient debates and things like that, but it just does it opens up the door to what humans might actually be capable of or have been capable of. And now we're again just reawakening to that. And I will close out with this as far as the collective consciousness. But that is to me the representation. So when we're looking at religion context and historical context, that is the representation of the second coming of Christ, is that humanity is collectively going to waken up to this. And it's not a physical body coming back to like anoint you, bless you. Sometimes even when people, even myself, when I was like, okay, well, ask them about what the second coming of Christ is to them, and then what that actually means to them as an individual, like, there's not a lot of meaning there. There's not a lot of context. To me, when I look at it as far as like the reawakening to all of these human aspects of things that we've literally severed that connection with the divine, that is the second coming of the Christ, because now you're not only going to have one Jesus, you're going to have thousands. So, and that is to me, again, where your attention, and I know people could say, man, that is a crazy concept taken from the beginning of this episode of where your attention, something as simple as intention and action and collective action, is something as simple as that concept can reshape the whole dynamic of your cosmos. And that when collectively we do it and we all wake up to this Christ consciousness and the abilities, the implications and the possibilities are endless, and we can only speculate, but we're going to be able to get to have a front row seat to experience that. And when I think about that collectively, I feel so much gratitude in my heart, for one, like, just having the ability to understand these things and be present in a time that these things are possible for me to experience. Like, I look at it where so many people on earth, and I've had these same feelings, because I think as human beings, that's the part of being in this physical reality, is you are given an ability to experience all these range of emotions, and we all have that same ability.
You understand what Christ is? Christ is you. We are all the Christ. Jesus never said he was coming back. He said the Christ would return. And by that he meant the consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the understanding of wisdom and ascension knowledge. It comes back and returns in every single person's mind. And by that method, the return.
And I think that we are just collectively waking up to what that ability can do collectively for us and meaningful to our life. And we don't need to stay down here in these dense structures and patterns and things that we've kind of allowed to control us. But I look at it like I literally have a front row seat to like such an energetic explosion in the cosmos. And I'm so glad that I'm finally waking up to it. And I'm so glad that I'm finally able to connect with people like you who understand it at a deeper level. And that's not on hierarchy. Like I want to say that if you want to understand this a little deeper, follow the podcast, like reach out to us. Do not hesitate. This is about community eventually and creating action in that community. And so this isn't a hierarchy structure of understandings or my ways, the Catholic way is the way to do it, or, this other way is the way to do it. It's just being sovereign. And I will reference that anytime, at least my understanding is if it goes against sovereignty and it's an oppressors type of situation, again, your attention and your actions, I've never really dealt with that like at a dark shadow aspect, if that really gives them a lot of power, if people want to put like that into context, like, okay, well, if the dark powers it be, if they understand all these concepts, Jonathan, that you're spitting out, like, can they use it for bad? I don't know. I don't use it for bad. I don't care what they do with it. Why would I care what they do with it? They've already been doing with it. You wake up into this world and you're programmed from day one. I grew up in the 80s in a small town in Missouri. So, I had video games, I had certain programming that, yeah, I'm glad I grew up in that era because there's a lot of cool things about that era, with technology. And I didn't have a lot of that in my childhood. I didn't have a screen in my face 24/7 because I didn't have that technology then. And I'm grateful for that. But I want to provide a space for myself and those around me and my children that our attention isn't anymore on Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce or whatever the media decides they want us to put our attention to, Trump, and the assassination. Really, people really they just need to really look at it really simply is, if I give this thought, if I give this thing this amount of focus and attention, what kind of balance does it bring to my life? What kind of energetic value and relationships does it bring to my life? Because you may have to go down alone a spiritual path for a while, but eventually, like when you stick with it and you apply it, you don't have to go searching anymore. There's no searching to do. I hate to say it, there's no church to go to and sit and listen to a hymn that's going to give you some other enlightenment. And I'm not saying religion can't have purpose for people. It can. It can give people a lot of peace. And if that gives them purpose and peace, then do that. But just have an understanding that some attention with that can have a negative effect. And, so really I just ask myself that anymore is, when I'm discerning these synchronicities, I'm discerning like how I'm manifesting things, was what I saw confirmation bias in my perception of my reality? Did I see that angel number because I stared at the clock for 7 minutes until it happened? That's not how it works. You're already in the back of your head, like, I'm staring at the clock. That's not how it works, man. So, just understand. For me, I like to say is I'm understanding this concept with everybody like yourself. I'm collectively riding that wave with you. So, I love it when people come on here and they give me different concepts to think about, like the inner sun. That is such a profound statement that, it literally, Francisco, is giving me chills. Like, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Because it's so impactful to sit here and really just understand my upbringing about religion. Like, you really brought something to my attention right now about this inner sun and my understanding of it. And how many times I've seen a cross in my existence, in my programming. And I know people, that's not a negative thing for me. I'm not talking about religion in a negative aspect in that context. I am talking about it like how many times that representation has been brought to me. And is it true? Is it factual? Like, it's okay to discern that information at 45 years of age or at 30 years of age. Like, it doesn't make you an inadequate human being. I'm meeting people on my spiritual journey that they're struggling a lot with their trauma and they're losing people in their life. And I see it. And I see this pain in their eyes, in their soul. And I feel for them because I've been there. I literally have been sitting in that very same seat. And I know that I have the very capabilities of going right back to there, just so people know. I'm not saying that that is not possible to do that again. So I just know that, like, I decide to shift my attention to things like this. You know, I'm not going to be caught on Instagram debating people about the Trump rally. I don't care. It has no meaning to me anymore. It has no value. I'd rather talk to Francisco about, like, his spiritual journey, what it means, like what he sees, what wave that we're combining and we're, you know, collectively riding together. Because in reality, I know one day I'm probably going to meet Francisco. And I know that there's an energetic value behind it, that when that happens, because of this energy that we consistently are feeding back and forth to each other, that when it does happen in the physical, there's a lot of meaning to it. So thank you for taking time today on a Sunday on your day off. I know you said it's been raining a lot. It's gorgeous there. And I know that I can go off on some stuff, but man, I really want to thank you, because now I have a whole thing to journal about. And like, literally, that's what I hope people get out of this show, is that it doesn't matter where you're at on your spiritual journey. Anybody can walk right into your life and give you a different perspective that you take. And it really, really provides a lot of value and meaning to your life, and makes you a more balanced individual. I know I'm going to journal about this inner son, Francisco, and I'm going to think about this for a while. So I'll be happy to share that with you later. So
Yeah, please do that.
So thank you, man. Thank you very much. So
Thank you as well for giving me this opportunity to learn also about your own perception, your own journey, listening to your to what you have learned from your meditations and from your own synchronicities.
thank you. Yeah, you as well. I'd be very happy, and I know that because on a podcast, there's only so much time, and it's really not relevant to other people. But when we meet in the physical, I can't wait to talk some bird stories and just like because I have all kinds of spiritual animal stories that have been happening to me lately. I've shared some of them with you off the show, so,
Yeah.
but there's some pretty intense ones too. So, and I know that collectively you're going to start. If I'm having them, I know that other people are having them and are going to continue to increase those as they pay attention to it. So thank you for naming this show a few weeks ago. I have been so excited. I worked on this script for a while, just so people and audience members know, because, you know, I do believe that the action part, like, again, how much energy you're putting into it is going to show in the product. So, and I think that is a representation. So thank you. It added a lot of context to the show, and it's something I was actually very excited to do, because on my own spiritual path, when I started understanding the quantum structure, it took me a lot of time to rewatch a lot of stuff, because nobody's around to teach you. You know, there's not a class you just go to on a lot of this stuff. So you have to learn a lot of it on your own.
Yeah.
So it's nice to experience that with somebody else, and somebody else who's experiencing it, these same concepts in their physical journey.
Yeah, sometimes we do need that time alone so we can focus our attention on the inside and our own answers and inner voice and guidance, and not on what other people say. It's like in the tarot cards, there's one called let me Google it quickly.
No problem. I do like the part about taking time, because That is a part of it. There's too much stimulation in our environment, but that's intentional, because if you're just constantly stimulated, you're not going to look inside.
Yeah.
It opens up the toolkit of excitement that contains all the necessary tools that start working for you. And the tools become the driving engine, that is your passion moving you forward. It's the synchronicity, which is the organizing principle that brings to you the circumstances and information and situations in exactly the correct order, at exactly the correct time, in the way you need to act on them. It also brings you things along the path of least resistance. It brings you things that is the path that connects you to all other expressions of your excitement in life. It brings you everything that will support you in whatever form of abundance you need to be supported to allow you to continue to act on your excitement. It brings you the reflective mirror that reveals to you anything within your unconscious mind that might be out of alignment with your excitement, so you can identify it, let it go, bring that energy back into your alignment. And it gives you everything that is relevant in your life. Everything. That's the complete kit. All you have to do is stay in the positive state, that no matter what happens, you identify it as something that can serve you in a positive way, so you'll get the positive effect from it. That's the entire instruction manual in a nutshell.
It's the hermit.
The Hermit?
Yeah. Sometimes we have to be that in that state, like in the hermit state, so we can completely focus on uh, our own messages and the answers that we're receiving. So, but also on the opposite, sometimes we do need like some other people that we can receive answers from or guidance, or even uh, people that can also be part of these synchronicities where you keep constantly receiving a message and connecting the dots. So, yeah, it's always like a balance. And also, the image that comes to my mind is also having a balance. And what we said about the inner sun, the earth's core, and the sun's core, like the three cores aligned. That's like also very important for me, like having searching for that alignment. Yeah. And also I was thinking about that separation you said. I like to read Dolores Cannon's books, and there's one where she explains that like this separation of timelines, and uh, we're doing that by the like the collective focus that we are having on certain stuff, like for example fear based or bliss based, and that's where the separation comes. And another thing that comes to my mind is what happened uh, to the people on ancient civilizations, why there isn't like evidence of their bodies. Did they actually vanish from this realm because they jumped over the fifth dimension? That's like what comes to my mind, that they maybe vanished because they went to that realm or that dimension, and that's why we can't perceive them, but maybe they are in this same uh, physical reality but in another density, so that's why they are not perceivable to us.
Yeah, no, I agree. So are you referencing more like the Mayans when you're
Yeah.
saying like, yeah. No, that's exactly what I thought of. And yeah, when I first understood the Mayans just up and disappeared, and then they're like, oh, they went out back into the jungle. It's like, what? There's not one person that said, yeah, I don't really want to go back that way. I'm going to stay here. So
Yeah.
some of the ways that they explain it to us is like they just see if it sticks, and people run with it, man. And But that's a cool look at it too. Yeah. Is that, so my understanding is that if 3D, 4D, and 5D is like a physical octave, if we're in the most dense third D physical part of that physical structure, like you said, if you want to call it dimension, density, octave, to me, it's all kind of the same. But like, again, we've referenced it on here before, like looking at your ceiling fan. If the ceiling fan is slow enough, if the frequency is dense and slow enough, you can see every blade and you can see the whole ceiling. If it's fast enough and the frequency is high, you don't see the blades at all. You just see right through the ceiling. Like you don't even see the fan. The blades disappear. You can't visualize them anymore. So I think, like you said, yeah, there's a visual component to our physical
Like
reality.
vibration and frequency.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So, like you said, if people are fearful and they're staying in this dense structure and attached to all these attachments, I don't know what's going to happen for you. I'm not here to speculate that you're going to be involved in some big world war and like all this stuff is going to happen. But I tend to believe that if you're focusing on a lot of fearful things, those things will manifest. So I just don't even give it attention because I want to focus on the highest timeline for myself and my friends, if that makes sense. And by friends, there are people out there I know that are friends of mine right now that I don't know them yet, but I will in due time because their frequency will be pulled. Ours, actually, I shouldn't say mine. Ours will be pulled together in some fashion. So yeah, so that's exactly how I see it, is what you said, as far as even the physical components of people if they have just up and disappeared. And again, is that ascension? Is that a form of ascension where they figured out how to be so balanced and harmonized with their inner sun? I love that now. That they rose their vibration so much as an electrical being, they ascended to a different dimension. And they can see us as spirit guides. They see us. They're there. It's like the Interstellar where he could like flick the little thing when he was. I don't know if people remember that movie where Matthew McConaughey was inside that space where he could like flick the thing and the little portal.
Interstellar?
Yeah, Interstellar, where at the end where he was kind of caught in that. I don't know if that was the representation more of like a 4D structure, but
Hmm.
he was basically like in there and he could like tap something and it would make a book move, in the space he was in. So, hey, Francisco, I'm going to give you a second because you're reloading. All right. So, yeah, I just, in conclusion to all this, balancing that inner sun, I think is, man, what a great concept at the end of this. So, did you have anything else, Francisco, that you kind of wanted to go over about what we've talked about, or any kind of conclusion or summary to the episode here for yourself?
I think it was that what I mentioned about like uh, giving your attention to positive things and collectively like building this new reality, not fear based but blissful and peaceful, and yeah, like going against what these people try to uh, make, like build like a negative reality, fear-based reality, go against that and focus on the all the blessings, the abundance, and everyone around with good intentions, and also about uh, focusing on this new reality that is building up first by aligning ourselves to like these new vibrations and the new uh, density that is building up, and yeah, like What else? I think that's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's the same. I think maybe there's a part of us in 2020 that we already asked for that, and now we manifested it energetically together during those isolated times. And this is the part of our creation. We're slowly coming together and creating it because we already asked for it. And through intention and our actions, we've continued to stay sovereign in that state. So here we are. So the fear-based stuff. Thank you. Like that's, yeah. People need
And
to,
what? Sorry,
no,
what
go
you
ahead.
mentioned. What you mentioned earlier that right now we are all over the world, like um, having our frequency or vibration acting like in a certain place, in a specific place, but in due time, maybe who knows, maybe while we raise our vibration, while the sun raise its consciousness, its vibration, and also the earth is doing that same thing. So as the earth is raising its consciousness, its vibration, that energy will be high enough so we can be in the same place and the energy will not collapse by that. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to see how people are being called to move to other places where they should be in due time, and it's because Earth is getting to that frequency where we can be in the same place and do that contribution with our own energy and our own wisdom and vibration, and following that journey and specific soul purpose that we have.
Great way. That's a very, very good conclusion to this portion of it. So, yeah, it's a lot to process, and that's that's a very, very insightful way to put that. And I agree. Everything I've experienced in the last couple years shows me that that's the path that we're all kind of down. And I think that there's some of us too right now, we're even kind of isolated a little bit differently, if that makes sense. Like I know in the spiritual community, a few people that I talk to, like they've actually came across this like moment in their life. They actually have a lot of time to work on themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool because like I haven't had that time before, and the other people I talked to said equally they haven't. So it's kind of cool because it's like the universe is providing us that time to go more into the hermit phase, I guess, like you were representing for this further growth. So yeah, I think we're doing the walk, like Vince says, we're doing the walk, and now we're standing up and we're realizing what we can do as human beings and what we can do walking on our own. And then before too long, we will learn how to join hands and learn how to walk together, and I think that'll be explosive in its own, perspective. So,
I like to think that that phrase that I read somewhere, that we are just helping everyone, like we are, I think it's like we are taking each other home, or like helping each other walk back home. Yeah.
I
Something
see
like
that.
that.
Yes. Like it doesn't matter age, but just like in a spiritual context where your big brother's walking you home from school, because they know how to get home, and you haven't quite learned that yet.
Yeah.
So they're just holding your hand and walking you towards, helping you along that path. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so you can obviously enjoy some of that good weather that you have been starved of a little bit lately with some of the rain. But yeah, it's cool, man. I'm excited to come to Central America. I am going to be coming down there sometime. I'm hoping in the fall, actually, is what I'm kind of shooting for.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, action, man. Now's the time, and I just know that I want to start. I want to start getting out there a little bit and just seeing different parts of the world, especially based on. He's fine. Just based on like pyramids and like electrical charge. These are things that I'm understanding, like the Earth's nodes and like how there's different charges. And if we're electrical beings, I want to be in places where the charge is good, not where it's real negative and chaotic. So that's my next journey for myself. So, but yeah, so all right. Well, thank you, Francisco, for that summary. I'm going to go ahead and kind of put a little conclusion on this, and then we'll wrap it up.
yeah,
But
please do that.
yeah. Absolutely. The idea that individual understanding and intentionality can collectively lead to a significant shift in collective consciousness is indeed profound and impactful. When individuals learn to harness their focus and intentions to shape their own realities, it creates a ripple effect that can influence the larger collective. This collective wave of conscious awareness has the potential to bring about significant positive changes in society as a whole. By aligning our thoughts and intentions with our desired outcomes, we can more effectively harness our potential and manifest our goals into reality. This concept encourages us to recognize the vast potential within us and the power we hold to shape our own reality through focused intention and conscious observation. Thank you for joining us of our understanding how, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Until the next 300 Raw podcast, keep focusing on what truly matters to you and watch how your reality transforms. Thank you, Francisco, for sharing your stories. I know you'll be on here more as kind of more of a co-creator with us in the Sun Tribe community. Thank you for your perspectives today.
Thank you as well.
I'm going to journal Inner Sun, and I'll let you know what comes out of that when I get into a little bit of a meditative state, because that's how I like to do it, and that's so cool. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time and your energy today. So.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Francisco. Bless.
Bless.